In the town of Kabira, everyone gathered to celebrate the wedding of Princess Amara and nobleman Kwame. The palace courtyard was filled with music, drums, and the laughter of guests. To the people, it looked like a perfect love story, a princess marrying the man she loved. Amara's eyes sparkled with joy, and Kwame's smile seemed full of pride. But no one knew that behind those smiles, a dark truth was waiting to break everything apart. When the drums fell silent and the vows were exchanged, Kwame leaned close to Amara. His words were soft only for her to hear. "Your father killed my family. Tonight I will finish his bloodline with you." Amara's heart stopped. The man she thought was her protector, her dream, her safe place, had just whispered her death sentence. Her lips still curved into a smile for the crowd, but inside she was trembling. The rest of the ceremony felt like a cruel play. Every time Kwame touched her hand, she wondered if it was the hand of her husband or her killer. Her chest tightened as the music grew louder, hiding the storm inside her. She wanted to scream, to run, but hundreds of eyes were watching the new bride. So she wore her crown of beads, danced gracefully, and hid her fear behind a smile. That night, as the feast went on, Amara's mind raced. Was Kwame truly the man she loved, or had he been her enemy all along? Was this marriage the beginning of her happily ever after, or the end of her life? The whispers of the palace said it was the most beautiful wedding Kabira had ever seen. But before the sun rose, the same palace would be filled with cries of shock, betrayal, and a truth that shook the entire kingdom. The village of Mzondo was alive that night. Lanterns glowed, drums beat in rhythm, and laughter filled the air as everyone celebrated the marriage of Zola and Bantu. Zola was the pride of Mzondo, the girl everyone admired, graceful, kind, and beautiful. Bantu was a wealthy trader, respected by the people, and together they looked like the perfect couple. Guests sang, children danced, and old women whispered that this would be a union blessed by the ancestors. To everyone it looked like a fairy tale. But behind Zola's glowing smile, her heart carried a shadow. She had buried it deep years ago by the river, never speaking of it again. She believed her secret had died with the water's silence. Yet on this night, when her whole life was supposed to begin anew, the ghost of her past rose before her. When the music softened and the crowd cheered for the new couple, Bantu leaned closer to her. His voice was low, cold, and sharp as a blade. "I know the secret you buried by the river. I saw you push him." Zola froze. Her blood turned to ice. The smile on her lips faltered, though she quickly forced it back for the eyes watching her. Inside, her chest was burning. She remembered the night by the river, the argument, the shove, the splash, the silence that followed. She thought the water had swallowed her sin forever. She thought no one had seen, but her husband had. She looked at Bantu with wide eyes, searching his face for mercy, for love, for anything. But all she saw was power. He held her life in his hands now, and he knew it. The feast continued, but for Zola, every drumbeat felt like her secret crashing against her ears. Every cheer of the villagers sounded like whispers of accusation. She sat beside Bantu, her body stiff, her hands cold, her mind screaming. He smiled at the people, but each time he leaned close, she felt the weight of his words pressing down on her soul. The food tasted like ashes, the songs like threats. She wondered why he had chosen tonight to reveal his knowledge. Was it to break her, to control her, to remind her that she was not free, even in marriage? And yet she could not cry, she could not run. She had to smile, to laugh when spoken to pretend everything was perfect. Because in Mzondo, a bride who showed weakness would be judged forever. As the night grew deeper, the space between them became a battlefield. Their eyes met like enemies. Every look from Bantu said, "I own your secret." Every look from Zola replied, "I will not break, not tonight." But inside she was breaking. The weight of the river, the memory of that night, and now the chains of her husband's whisper all pressed down on her heart. The villagers would later remember that wedding as the grandest feast Mzondo had ever seen. But Zola would remember it as the night her freedom died, the night her husband's whisper chained her forever. And from that night on, their marriage was not love, it was war hidden behind wedding smiles. The hills of Nairobi glowed with firelight that night. Drums echoed across the valleys, and songs rose high into the sky as two clans came together for a wedding that was meant to bring peace after many years of rivalry. Tay, the proud warrior of his people, was marrying Ebel, the gentle daughter of the other clan. Everyone believed this union would end the feuds, heal old wounds, and finally bring harmony to the hills. Ebel walked gracefully in her wedding beads, her smile lighting the night. Her family cheered, and Tay's people clapped their drums louder, proud of their new bond. To the crowd it looked like love. To the elders it looked like peace. But to Ebel it was more complicated. She was giving her life, her future, to a man whose eyes often carried storms. When the vows were spoken, and the chants of blessing filled the air, Tay leaned close. His lips barely moved, but his whisper cut through her heart. "If you betray me, the curse will fall on your people tonight." Ebel's breath caught in her chest. She forced a smile for the crowd, but her hands trembled under her wedding cloth. His words spun in her mind like fire. Curse. On her people. On the very night meant to unite them. She could not understand if it was a threat, a warning, or a dark truth. As she stood beside her husband, her mind screamed with fear. Every laugh from the guests sounded distant. Every beat of the drums felt like thunder in her ears. She wanted to ask him what he meant, but she could not. The people were watching, expecting joy, expecting hope. So she danced, she smiled, she pretended. But inside, she carried a heavy stone of dread. Then, as the feast went on, the sky began to change. Clouds gathered where the stars had been clear just moments before. A strong wind swept through the hills, carrying dust and whispers. The torches flickered, and children clung to their mothers. The drummers slowed, looking nervously at the sky. And then lightning cracked. A sudden storm broke over Nairobi hills, wild and angry. Rain fell in sheets, thunder roared, and the ground shook beneath their feet. The villagers screamed, running for shelter. Some cried out that the ancestors were angry. Others whispered that the curse had already begun. Ebel's heart pounded as she looked at Tay. His face was calm, almost cold, as if he had expected this. She could not tell if he had truly cursed the land, or if fate had chosen this moment to strike fear into everyone. But one thing was certain: his whisper had become real in the minds of the people. The wedding that was supposed to bring peace turned into a night of terror. The songs were drowned by thunder, the feasts forgotten in chaos. And from that day, the people of Nairobi Hills would forever remember that storm as the night a bride's smile hid a curse, and a groom's whisper carried the power to shatter peace. The palace of Kunda sparkled brighter than the stars that night. Golden lamps lit every corner, musicians played endlessly, and nobles from faraway towns gathered to witness the grandest wedding of the decade, the union of Princess Leora and the noble Obinna. The people cheered for their new queen, believing she had found a husband who would stand by her side and protect the throne. To all who watched, it looked like the perfect love story. Leora's heart was full as she held Obinna's hands during the vows. She had dreamed of this day, of ruling beside her husband with strength and love. But the dream shattered in a single breath. As the vows ended and the crowd roared with joy, Obinna leaned close. His whisper slid like a knife into her chest. "I married you to steal your throne. You won't see another sunrise as queen." The smile on Leora's lips stayed frozen, but inside her whole world collapsed. Her body trembled under her gown, though she moved with grace so that no one would suspect. Around them, guests clapped and celebrated, but in her ears, only his words repeated. She looked at the man who now stood as her husband, her supposed partner, and all she saw was a traitor who had entered her life with poison hidden behind a smile. Through the feast, she danced with him, her hands cold in his. Her laughter rang out like music, but her heart was full of fire. Each time he looked at her, she felt his silent challenge. He thought she was weak, that she was already defeated. He thought she would sit quietly and let him take everything her family had built. But Leora was not weak. As the drums beat louder and the wine poured, her mind was already working. Every step she took on the dance floor was a step deeper into her plan. Her trembling hands now hid determination. Her eyes glimmered not with tears, but with resolve. The night carried on with joy for the guests, but for Leora it was war hidden under silks and jewels. She whispered nothing back to Obinna. Not yet. She wanted him to believe he had already won. By the time dawn arrived, the palace was no longer filled with laughter. Instead, it was filled with shock. The people woke not to Obinna's victory, but to a scene no one had imagined. The very man who had threatened to take Leora's throne never saw the sunrise he promised her she wouldn't. And in the morning light, when the whispers spread through Kunda, the story was told and retold. The queen who was nearly betrayed on her wedding night, but whose courage turned a deadly secret into a shocking triumph. That night, everyone thought they saw a bride dancing. But in truth they had watched a queen sharpen her crown with fire. The village of Maliko was alive with joy the day Ayanda married Sephu. Bright fabrics decorated the streets, drums echoed through the hills, and children ran around singing wedding songs. Ayanda was the jewel of Maliko, the girl every man had once dreamed of marrying. But her heart had chosen Sephu, the warrior with scars from many battles, a man admired for his strength and feared for his temper. To the villagers, it looked like the perfect match. Beauty and bravery joined together. Ayanda smiled as she walked to the ceremony, her beads shining, her heart full of hope. She thought she was stepping into a future of love and protection. When she stood beside Sephu, the crowd cheered, elders blessed them, and the air carried the sound of celebration. But then, as the vows ended and the cheering grew louder, Sephu leaned close. His whisper was low, almost hidden by the music, yet it crushed her soul. "I am the one who burned your family's farm." Ayanda's breath caught. Her eyes filled with tears, but she forced herself not to let them fall. Her lips curved into a smile for the people, but her heart was breaking into pieces. She remembered that night, the smoke, the flames, her family crying, everything they owned turning to ashes. For years no one knew who was behind it. Now, on the day she became a bride, the truth stood beside her in wedding robes. The crowd only saw a happy couple, but inside Ayanda, fire was burning. Each time Sephu touched her hand, she felt hatred rise in her chest. Each time he smiled for the guests, she wanted to scream the truth, but she stayed silent, her pain hidden behind her crown of beads. That night, as the feast continued, Ayanda sat by his side, her mind racing. The food tasted bitter, the songs sounded distant. She watched him laugh and drink, proud of the victory he thought he had won, both her hand and her silence. But Ayanda was not the fragile jewel people thought she was. She was sharper than stone, fiercer than fire. When the moon rose high, the celebration turned into something else. The drums still played, the people still sang, but in the shadows, Ayanda made her move. Her tears had dried, replaced with determination. She was no longer just a bride, she was a woman carrying the weight of her family's suffering. By the time the night ended, whispers spread across Maliko. They said the bride's wedding had turned into a battlefield. They said Ayanda did not wait years for justice. She took it within hours of wearing her beads. The villagers would never forget that night, when a gentle bride showed the strength of a warrior, and when love turned into vengeance before the dawn could rise. The village of Zamora was shining that evening. Drums echoed through the air, dancers filled the courtyard, and lanterns swung from every tree. It was Halima's wedding night, the day she had dreamed of since she first met Nuru. To everyone watching, it looked like a love story written by fate. The beautiful Halima, gentle and kind, had chosen Nuru, a man admired for his charm and strength. Families celebrated, neighbors cheered, and the people of Zamora believed this union was blessed. Halima's smile glowed as she stood beside her groom. Her heart raced with happiness. She believed she was marrying the man who would protect her, cherish her, and walk with her for life. But the truth she had never imagined was about to be whispered into her ear. When the vows ended and the music rose higher, Nuru leaned close. His voice was cold, sharp, and cruel as he said, "I married you to destroy your brother. He will not live to see tomorrow." Halima froze. Her whole body went stiff, her smile still painted on her lips for the crowd, but her soul shook. She wanted to scream, to step back, to tear away from him, but hundreds of eyes were watching. His words rang inside her head again and again. The man she thought was her love, her husband, her partner, was her brother's enemy. The feast went on, but Halima heard nothing. The laughter of the guests sounded like thunder in her ears. The music that once brought her joy now felt like knives stabbing her heart. Each time Nuru held her hand, she wanted to pull away. But she stayed calm, forcing a smile, hiding the storm inside her chest. She knew her brother was somewhere among the guests, laughing, drinking, unaware of the danger waiting for him. Panic rose in her chest, but so did something stronger: courage. She could not let Nuru's plan succeed. She could not let her marriage become the trap that killed her family. So Halima acted. While the people danced and feasted, she moved with quiet determination. Her eyes searched for her brother. When she found him, she leaned close under the cover of laughter and warned him with trembling lips. At first, he looked confused, but the fear in her eyes made him understand. Then Halima did something no one expected. In the middle of the feast, with all the people watching, she stood tall, her voice rising above the drums. She spoke not as a bride, but as a sister, as a daughter of Zamora. She revealed Nuru's dark secret. Gasps filled the courtyard. Faces turned pale. The music stopped. Nuru's mask fell, and his smile turned to fury. The night that was supposed to be remembered for love became the night of betrayal and shock. Guests scattered, whispers filled the air, and the story of Halima's courage spread like fire across neighboring towns. People would forever say, "In Zamora, a bride turned her wedding into a battlefield of truth," and the whisper meant to break her heart instead revealed the true face of her groom. The night sky over Mavoko was glowing with lanterns, their light dancing across the palace walls. Drums beat in rhythm, flutes played soft melodies, and villagers filled the courtyard with joy. It was the wedding of Kayamaka and Ikin, a night everyone had waited for. Kayamaka was known for her beauty and gentle spirit, while Ikin was admired as a man of ambition and wealth. Together, they looked like a perfect match, and the people believed their union would bring prosperity to Mavoko. Kayamaka's smile lit the night as she walked beside her groom. Her heart overflowed with love, and she believed her dreams had finally come true. The elders blessed them, children sang wedding songs, and the crowd cheered as the two swore eternal love under the glowing lanterns. To everyone watching, it was the happiest night in Mavoko. But happiness ended with a whisper. As the music grew louder and the vows settled, Ikin leaned close, his words cutting her like a knife. "I sold your sister to buy this feast." The world around Kayamaka spun. Her breath caught, her knees trembled, but she forced herself to keep smiling. Hundreds of eyes were watching, cheering, clapping. No one could see the storm raging inside her. Her sister, her own blood, sold like an object just so Ikin could show off his wealth. The man she thought she loved had turned her joy into ashes. Every drumbeat now felt like a hammer against her heart. Every cheer from the villagers sounded like mockery. She held his hand, but inside she burned with rage. The palace lights that once looked beautiful now seemed like fire waiting to consume everything. Through the feast, Ikin laughed, drank and boasted, proud of his night of glory. But Kayamaka's eyes were cold. Her smile masked the fury in her chest. She was not just a bride that night, she was a sister betrayed, a woman wronged, and she knew she could not stay silent. When the night grew late and the guests grew careless in their joy, Kayamaka moved. Her heart no longer carried love, it carried vengeance. The palace that had been filled with laughter soon echoed with screams. The glow of lanterns mixed with the glow of flames as her rage spilled into action. People would later whisper about that night with trembling voices. They would say the bride of Mavoko did not sleep in her wedding bed, she turned her wedding into a battlefield. They would remember how a gentle smile hid a fire that no one could put out, and how love's betrayal gave birth to vengeance that lit the whole of Mavoko. And long after the flames died, the people still spoke of Kayamaka, the bride who turned her pain into power, and whose wedding night became the most feared story in their land. The village of Yukuru glowed with fire that night. Flames from the wedding torches shimmered across the lake, making the water sparkle like gold. Music filled the air, and the sound of drums echoed far into the hills. It was Nima's wedding night, the night she had waited for, the night she was meant to step into her future with the man she loved, Jelani. She stood by his side, her hands warm in his, her heart beating fast with joy. The people clapped and cheered, children danced by the fires, and elders smiled with pride. Everyone believed this was the beginning of a blessed life for the young couple. To all it looked like love, pure and strong. But then came the whisper. As the vows ended and the crowd cheered louder, Jalani leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. His words fell like poison. "Your mother was my mistress, and you are my daughter's replacement." Nima froze. Her breath stopped. Her heart felt as if it had been ripped out of her chest. The smile stayed on her lips for the people watching, but inside her world was collapsing. In a single moment, everything she thought she knew about her marriage, her future, even her family, shattered. Her mother, his mistress, and her, nothing more than a replacement. The words echoed in her mind, twisting her joy into unbearable pain. She wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse to the ground, but she couldn't. All of Yukuru was watching. The bride could not falter, so she stood tall, her hands trembling in his. Her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. The music carried on, the feast grew louder, but for Nima the sounds were distant, drowned out by the weight of his whisper. She looked at her new husband and no longer saw love. She saw betrayal. She saw shame. She saw a curse that had just been tied to her life. Through the night she moved like a shadow, her face calm, her body graceful, but her spirit was breaking. She thought of her mother, of the truth hidden from her, and of the cruel fate that had led her into this marriage. And as the fires burned bright around the lake, she knew this night would not end as the people expected. When dawn finally came, the joy of Yukuru turned into whispers of horror. The feast that had begun in celebration ended in cries of betrayal and blood. No one had expected it. No one had imagined that behind Nima's soft smile, a storm was waiting. From that day on, the villagers told the story in hushed voices. They said the wedding by the lake was cursed. They said a whisper destroyed a bride's future, and what followed became the darkest tale in Yukuru's history. And they never forgot Nima, the bride whose life turned from love to tragedy in a single night. The village of Lufuno had never seen such a grand celebration. Drums thundered across the fields, dancers spun in bright colors, and the smell of roasted feasts filled the air. It was the wedding of Ao, the kind and gentle daughter of the village, to Kato, a wealthy trader whose riches had dazzled everyone. The people believed Ao had found a husband who would give her comfort and protection. Laughter echoed through the night as the villagers called it the happiest day of her life. Ao smiled as she walked down the path, her beads shining under the lanterns. Her family clapped proudly, the crowd cheered, and her heart beat fast with hope. She believed she was walking toward a future of love. But everything changed in the moment of vows. Kato leaned close, his lips almost brushing her ear. His words were sharp, cold, and filled with threat. "Run after tonight, or you will never see daylight again." Oh froze. Her blood turned cold, her chest tightened, but her face stayed calm for the hundreds of eyes watching. She forced a smile, but inside her world collapsed. Her husband, the man she had trusted with her future, had just revealed himself as her nightmare. The music grew louder, the people cheered, but to Ao it all sounded far away. She sat beside Kato through the feast, her hands trembling under the table. His smile fooled everyone, but she saw the danger behind it. She knew if she stayed, she would not survive the night. Fear wrapped around her heart, but so did courage. She could not scream, she could not fight in front of the guests. But she could escape. As the night deepened and the guests became drunk with joy, Ao slipped away. Her steps were light, her breath sharp, her heart racing faster than the drums. She vanished into the shadows, leaving behind the music, the fire, and the man who had promised her death. When the feast ended and the time came for the bridal chamber, guests followed with laughter and gifts. But when the doors opened, the room was empty, the bed untouched, the bride gone. Chaos erupted. Whispers turned to gasps, gasps turned to screams. Faces turned pale, children cried, and elders shook their heads in disbelief. The groom's mask of charm began to crumble, and the truth spread like fire. Ao had not disappeared out of fear. She had escaped a predator. That night became the darkest memory in Lufuno's history. The wedding that was meant to unite families ended in shame and shock. No one forgot the image of Kato standing alone in his grand palace. The bride he tried to claim vanished into the night. And from that day forward, the people of Lufuno whispered a story that never died. The story of Ao, the bride who saved her own life by running, and the wedding where love was supposed to bloom but instead revealed the face of evil. The village of Enzani had never seen such a wedding. Thousands gathered under the night sky, their faces glowing with excitement. Music filled the air, drums beat like thunder, and dancers spun in circles as if Yananya and Chaik began their first dance as husband and wife. Smiles, cheers, and laughter surrounded them, and for a moment, it felt like a night of pure happiness. But then Chaik leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. His whisper was soft, but it cut deeper than any blade. This firework display is not for celebration, it's the fire that will burn your father's empire. If Yananya's steps faltered, her smile froze on her lips, but no one noticed. The people clapped and cheered, thinking the couple's dance was perfect. Only if Yananya knew the truth. Her husband, the man she trusted with her heart, had just confessed he came not for love, but for revenge. The first sparks shot into the sky, exploding in colors. The crowd gasped with joy, children clapped their hands, elders nodded proudly. But then, beneath the glitter of the fireworks, the earth began to shake. Loud bangs echoed across the fields, not from celebration but from hidden explosions. The feast tables toppled, flames spread through the tents, and the air filled with smoke. Guests screamed, women grabbed their children, men tried to pull their families to safety. The wedding ground turned into chaos as fire devoured everything meant for joy. If Yananya stood frozen, her heart shattering. Her father's empire, his life's work, his pride, was burning before her very eyes. And the man holding her hand was the one who lit the match. That night, Enzani would never forget the wedding that began with music and ended with fire. Some said if Yananya married her father's destroyer. Others whispered she had married the man who freed her family from secrets long hidden. But one truth spread like wildfire. The wedding fire of Enzani was a night no one ever forgot.